most common question I get on social media and on YouTube is, what camera should I purchase? I'm a beginner photographer, or I'm an aspiring videographer, or something like that. And it always is like, I just don't know what camera to get. I've seen all of these different options. Well, this video is for you. This is my 2024 Sony Alpha Camera Buyer's Guide for any sort of beginner photographer or videographer. For your first camera, I usually recommend purchasing a used camera. So most of our list here is from the used camera market, but you can of course look for new camera options as well. My biggest tip to you when buying a used camera is to be patient and wait for a good deal to come on the used camera market. I see deals all the time on Facebook Marketplace, on Craigslist, on shopgoodwill.com, as well as eBay, of course. eBay is a great place. Most of the cameras I'm showing you today, I was able to purchase off of eBay for a really affordable price point, okay? So be patient, time the market right, don't get too greedy, and don't try to just pounce on a deal because you might see it. Wait for a really good deal to hit the market because they inevitably will come. You just have to wait for it. We have 10 different options in this video, and we're gonna start from lowest to highest, beginning with the Sony NEX3N. I actually have this camera right here, and I've really enjoyed using this camera. I think it has a lot of pros for beginners, things like high quality photo capabilities. It also shoots pretty good 1080p video at 24 frames a second. So if you're someone wanting to just kind of dip your toes into the video world, I think the 3N is a good option because for whatever reason, this camera's codecs and resolutions just perform better than some of the other NEX cameras in Sony's lineup, like the NEX5, the NEX C3 and F3. The 3N is way better for video capabilities. So I'd look at the 3N as kind of the baseline model and then work your way up from there. I found my 3N off of eBay for $69 US, which is an insane price point. And it's literally the cheapest mirrorless camera I could find off of eBay at the time, okay? So it's important to be patient, wait for a good deal, and that's how I got the NEX3N. The next camera on our list is the Sony NEX5R, which is similar to the 3N in a lot of ways, specifically with the fully flip-up screen. Both of them share the flip-up screen, but this camera is a little bit better for video creators, okay? You're gonna get full 1080p video up to 60 frames a second, which the 3N does not have 60 FPS. It only has 24, and it is just a better sensor overall. So you're gonna get some better autofocus tracking for video results. It has some pixels dedicated to phase detect autofocus, which is just a more improved autofocus system in Sony's camera lineup. And so you're gonna see better autofocus performance. And you also get, what I love, is a dedicated shutter speed dial right here. So you can set that dial to shutter speed or even aperture or something if you want it a different dial. But this is kind of the cheapest NEX camera that features a thumb dial to control settings. I found my NEX5R for $104, and they typically sell between $100 and $200 on eBay. The next camera on our list, I think, is by far the best designed Sony NEX camera, which is the Sony NEX6. This camera is outstanding in a lot of regards. It's a great photo taker. It's very on par with some of even Sony's cameras that are released later than the NEX system. So the A6000 line, the A5100 line, etc. So it's really on par for photos. Video-wise, I'd say it's very similar to the NEX5R. Okay, so you're gonna get similar video results out of this camera, but there's just a way more like professional kind of style with this. Okay, so you're gonna get like a mode dial up top to change from manual to video mode to panoramic. You also get a lot of custom buttons on the body, like autofocus lock, a function button, etc. And you get a hot shoe on top of the camera to mount different accessories like a flash or a microphone or a light or whatever you want to mount in the hot shoe. My favorite feature of the NEX6 is its high resolution viewfinder. It's a really good viewfinder for taking photos. So of the 3 cameras that I listed so far, I really think the NEX6 is the best option for someone who's a beginner photographer who wants the viewfinder, wants a really good photo package. This is a great option, and you're gonna get pretty good video results as well. I found mine for $177 off of eBay, and it came with a kit lens, which I just thought was a great price. I jumped on it. I waited for the right timing for it. I found it and I purchased. So make sure you wait for the right time. Okay, the first 3 were some of my NEX camera recommendations. Now we're gonna get into some of the next phase of the Sony ecosystem, starting with the Sony A5100. Why I like this camera is actually a lot of the same reason why I like the NEX3N. These are almost the exact same camera bodies, which I found just fascinating with the flip-up screen, the button placement, the on and off button, the way the side ports are, the HDMI slot, the SD card slot, the charging slot. It's just kind of the basically the same camera body style, but with a way better autofocus system and resolutions for video. The A5100 is the first camera that shipped from Sony with the XAVC-S codec out of the box. So that's a really high quality codec to get you better video results that all of the NEX cameras didn't have. So you're gonna get better video out of this camera. You're gonna get a world-class autofocus system and touch focus capabilities on the back of the camera. This is the cheapest camera on the list that actually has touch focus to be able to touch focus and do some like touch focus tracking operations. I picked up my A5100 for $225 in 2023, and I think you'll be able to find them on the used camera market for a similar price point. Usually they pop up between $200 and $350, so be sure to time the market right and try to get one in the $200 price point. Okay, sliding into the number 5 spot is the Sony a6000. I love this camera. This camera is just outstanding in so many regards. What a lot of people don't know, however, is that the a6000 and the Sony a5100 actually share the exact same sensor. So as far as image performance, at slots 4 and 5 here on my list, the a5100 and the a6000, you're gonna get the same image quality. You're just gonna get a different experience by shooting with the two. The a5100 has a fully flip-up screen to be able to film yourself in a YouTube style setup like that. So I usually gravitate towards the a5100 for video purposes. But as far as photography, I would always go with the a6000 because it comes with a viewfinder. I like the ability to shoot in brighter environments. You kind of need to rely on that viewfinder rather than looking at the back LCD screen, which this a6000 doesn't have the brightest LCD screen. So I'd really recommend using that viewfinder for photos. And then for video, it's kind of like my least favorite ever, like Sony screen that just kind of flips up like this. It's such a weird flip screen. Not my favorite. I really prefer the fully flip up screen of the a5100. With the a6000, you also get a hot shoe that you do not get on the Sony a5100. So that's good for mounting a flash or a microphone, etc. I picked this camera up for $350 and I see them all day long for that price point, between $300 and $450. So just know that if you see that $450 price point, that's kind of someone trying to like price gouge you. That's nearly the retail price of this camera. I think it was around $600 to $650 when it was released. And that's nearly 10 years ago. 10 years ago, it would be 2014 for this camera. And we're entering 2024. So don't pay that price point for this camera. It's a 10-year-old camera, so make sure you pay closer to that like $300, $350 price point. The next camera on our list is the Sony ZV-E10, and I just worked with a client who was trying to build sort of a podcast setup for video podcasting with remote guests. And this is actually the camera that I recommended to my client because they were on a budget. I've used this camera many times. It's a very good camera, and it has the same sensor as most of the Sony a6000 series cameras, like the a6400, a6600, etc. Sort of those higher end a6000 cameras. This is the best iteration of that, and it's the Sony ZV-E10. My main feature that I love is the USB-C streaming feature. So if you're a gamer or a streamer, this is such a reliable and easy way to just pop a USB-C cable directly into your computer, and now you have a streaming capability with no HDMI, capture cards, or anything like that. This is a great camera, great photo capabilities. You get 4K video as well. I just don't think in 2024 the ZV-E10 will be obsolete anytime soon. I think this is going to be a staple in Sony's camera lineup for about 4 or 5 years, and it'll sort of, as the a6000 line phases out, I think the ZV-E10 will kind of reign supreme at the top of that sort of style of camera. This is one of the few cameras on this list that you can still purchase new. This camera is still in production. So I'd recommend checking out a new option. If you want to look at Facebook Marketplace for like a lightly used ZV-E10, that's certainly something you can do. But new, they come around like $550 to $600. Sometimes there's even like Black Friday deals. So make sure you time the market right and just know like when sales are happening, holiday sales, Thanksgiving, Christmas, around then, these things always go on sale. So wait for those sales as well. The number 7 camera on our list is the Sony RX100 Mark VII, okay? So this is a camera that a lot of people don't talk about because this is basically a professional point and shoot camera. I wanted to make sure I included one point and shoot camera on this list because there's actually a lot of people who want an all-in-one package from Sony, and there's not a lot of all-in-one packages that are actually really good. Now, this is one of them. The RX100 series is really solid. Here at number 7, I almost put the Sony RX100 Mark V because it's a little bit cheaper and I really enjoy it. But I actually prefer the Mark VII, which is why I sold my Mark V a few years ago, because the Mark VII has a way longer zoom range. So it's like a 24 to 200 millimeter equivalent lens. versus the RX 100 Mark 1 through the 5 are all a 24 to 70 equivalent. So I'd say any one of the RX 100 series cameras are really good. They're really good for photos. A lot of them have 4K capabilities. The Mark 1 through the Mark 5, several of them have a built-in ND filter, which is really cool. And then the 6 and 7 dropped the ND filter, but have a 24 to 200 zoom lens on them. So there's a lot of great features in all of these RX series cameras. These are great for people who do travel videos, you hike, you camp, you backpack around, and you don't want to carry a big kit with you. This is an outstanding option and gets high quality video. I have multiple reviews on my YouTube channel about this camera and the RX 100 Mark V as well. So check that out. Usually, I mean, new, this camera is like $1,200, so it's pretty expensive, but you can find them used. I found mine used. I found someone selling it for $500. So that's a great price. Now, I'd say most often you're going to see it closer to $600 to $900. So try to time it around that like $700 or $750, that's a great price for the RX 100 Mark 7 in 2024. Coming in at number 8 is the Sony a7 III. Now this camera has made me more money than any camera I've ever owned just because of what I was doing at the time with the camera. I was touring with artists. I was shooting all sorts of production things. It was in the heat of like my wedding filmmaking career, my wedding photo career. So I was shooting a ton of weddings all the time with this camera. It brought me in like probably close to $80,000 with that camera in a span of a couple years, which is just a great source of revenue directly from buying. At the time, it was a $2,000 camera. So spend $2,000, get $80,000 from that camera. That's a great investment if you ask me. Now, this is actually the only full frame camera I have on my list. And so I'd really encourage you to check it out if you want that full frame system. All the rest of these cameras are APS-C sensors, except for the RX 100, which is just like a 1-inch sensor. So the a7 III is full frame. You're gonna get 8-bit color science, which is a little bit older color science for Sony. So I wouldn't recommend shooting an S-Log3 very often. I'd shoot it in a different style of setup. I'd shoot it probably in S-Log2. And change the color mode to ITU 709 matrix. That's a kind of a technical thing. If you have a question, feel free to DM me on Instagram about that. But overall, this camera takes amazing photos, really good 1080p video. It has outstanding autofocus. You also get 4K capabilities with a bit of rolling shutter, but it's okay if you lock it off on sticks and you're gonna just be shooting like interview type work. The a7 III is a great option. I personally sold mine about 2 years ago for $1,200. And that's a little bit high now. And I'd say you can get this camera easily for $1,000, if not closer to $800 to $850. I see them often on Facebook Marketplace for $850. So check there and you'll get a good deal. Okay, coming to the end of our list here with 2 final cameras. The first being the Sony a6700. Basically, if you buy this camera, you're not gonna need another camera for a really long time, but it still comes in kind of that entry-level price point at around $1,000 used, if you can find one used, up to like $1,300 or $1,400 brand new. Now, this camera is incredible. You're gonna get brand new color science, 10-bit color science out of the a6700. It's flawless color. It's gonna be great for video production work, for professional video production work for a really long time. Also, takes amazing images, amazing still images. It is a crop sensor, so you just have to think about that when purchasing your lens decisions. All of these, you have to think about that because a lot of them are crop sensors. So you're gonna get the 1.5 times crop factor. So like a 20 millimeter lens becomes more like a 30 millimeter lens, if that makes sense. But just think about that, the a6700, you literally cannot go wrong with this camera. I love using this camera, so check that out if you're interested. And finally, wrapping up with the Sony FX30, which is practically the same camera as the Sony a6700. It's the same sensor, so you're gonna get a lot of the same features, but it's housed in the body of the Sony FX3, which is what I'm currently filming on right now. If you are someone who wants to make professional videos and you want to be taken seriously as a videographer, you can be with any of these cameras, but I think you'll kind of think of yourself, and clients might even think of yourself in a different light if you carry around the FX30. This thing just looks like a cinema camera. It's beautifully designed. If you decide to add the top handle accessory, you're gonna get XLR inputs right away. There's just so many things going for this camera, but this camera, the caveat I have here is this is specifically for video shooters. I would not purchase the FX30 for photos. I think it technically can take pictures, but I wouldn't ever do that with this camera. I would only use this for professional video production work. So if you're someone who's like a beginner-ish, but you know you want to do video full time, you could kind of skip all the rest of the cameras on this list and go straight to the Sony FX30. Okay, those are my 10 camera recommendations moving into 2024. I hope this video was helpful for you and answers all of the questions that I get in my Instagram DMs and YouTube comments. I get these all the time. what camera should I purchase? Well, here are 10 options at varying price points as low as $80 or $69 in the NEX3N, all the way up to like $1,800 with the Sony FX30. Thank you so much for taking time to watch this video. Feel free to leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. I'll see you guys in the next one. Much love.